Hey everybody, welcome to a great video. Myself and my cousin ended up going out to Clearwater Beach and we saw a drive-by big screen. That's how they do advertising now on the water. They used to have skywriting and planes that came over pulling signs, but this thing was just floating along Tampa Bay. So you're going to see some living word testimony from a pretty good provider on my past life as Billy the Kid. I went with my cousin Kerry and her 6-year-old, very mature boy, Ian, who's actually awake right now. It's after midnight on the 21st. I'm going to show him and he's going to smile. Get ready, Ian, and you'll be on TV. Say hi, everybody. Good kid. He's really smart. So we had a great day. Rise up. Reincarnation means born again. You're looking at a tail end of a wave 3 right there. 6 years old. Babies after 2021. No karma. So be Christ. And enjoy this video. Peace. So before I kick this video off formally, I'd like to tell you a little bit about my Uncle John and my Aunt Pat. She's my godmother. You know, in the Catholic faith, you have godparents. She was also my godmother as Billy the Kid. So in this life, her youngest daughter is named Kerry. She's a lot like her mother, behaviorally. She's funny, she's smart, and she was pregnant with her son, Ian, and her husband passed away during her pregnancy. So she raised him as a single mom. And I smoked pot with Pat and John down in Caracas, Venezuela, in 1974, Christmas vacation. Kerry was alive, but she doesn't remember it. I was up with the Taylors and my godmother and my Uncle John, who was the treasurer of Union Carbide. So get this. He knew his boss, another guy named Jack or something, great guy, who was the CFO. So he worked for the CFO of a company that destroyed the globe. India, they just burned things all over like they're not around anymore. But in his position as treasurer, as an accountant, his positions went from Argentina to Brazil to Venezuela to Colombia over a career span. Then he retired in Connecticut, and he passed a couple of years ago. An absolutely phenomenal man. You got it, I'll smoke it. Man after my own heart. He's way up there in my book. And his daughter's great, and his grandson is great too, a little 6-year-old. So watch this. But I'll offer whatever commentary is needed at the end, so I don't interject.
Kill the kid, then why didn't he receive the reward money? And while we're asking questions, just who was this Billy Barlow character? What was that all about? And who was Brushy Bill Roberts? Did Brushy Bill really have all the same
He's an
scars as
imposter.
Billy the Kid?
That's all
And
I'm going to
wasn't there
say.
a photo comparison study conducted by the FBI that showed Brushy and Billy were a 93% match? We're going to discuss all of this and more as we finally clear up a few misconceptions concerning one of the greatest history hoaxes of all time. My name's Danny Shane Gillis McBride, and this is the Wild West Extravaganza. Pat Garrett never received the reward for killing Billy the Kid because he couldn't prove that the kid was dead. No photo, no body, no proof, no reward, right? Well, you may find this hard to believe, but everything you just heard is 100% false. Matter of fact, not only did Garrett receive that bounty on the kid's head, but he received it twice. If you'll recall, back on December 23rd, 1880, Sheriff Garrett arrested Billy the Kid over at Stinking Springs. Skip ahead a few weeks later, and per the January 13th, 1881 edition of the Las Vegas Gazette, Garrett was paid the official $500 reward that Governor Wallace had offered for Billy the Kid, and a lot more to boot. Thanks to grateful citizens, Pat ended up walking away with around $1,500. And then, of course, the kid escaped, and Garrett tracked him down again, killing him on the night of July 14th, 1881. And although the second reward was delayed, Garrett did ultimately collect it. But why did it take so long? Was it because Pat couldn't prove that he killed Billy? Negative. The delay in payment was purely bureaucratic and based on a technicality. Well, actually two technicalities. The wording of the notice, as placed in prominent newspapers by Governor Lew Wallace, read as follows: Billy the Kid, $500 reward. I will pay $500 to any person or persons who will capture William Bonney, alias the Kid, and deliver him to any sheriff of New Mexico. Satisfactory proof of identity will be required. Signed, Lew Wallace, Governor of New Mexico. All right, so as you can see right off the bat, the first issue is that Garrett killed the kid rather than capturing him. This did prove to be just a minor issue, as all seemed to agree that Pat had no other choice. Even the governor of New Mexico, Lionel Sheldon, stated that Garrett could not technically comply with the terms of the reward because when he, quote, met the kid in Maxwell's room, it is very certain that one or the other would be killed. It was not a reward, the payment of which depended on conviction. The kid had been convicted and was under sentence to be hanged. Garrett was in pursuit with an intention to capture if it could be done normally, but under the circumstances of their meeting, capture was out of the question, end quote. And those are the exact words of Governor Sheldon. Second and biggest issue had to do with whether or not the reward was a personal offer from former Governor Lew Wallace, and if so, was the territory of New Mexico still bound to make good on it? Wallace placed the notice on December 22nd, 1880. He then resigned as governor less than 5 months later on May 5th, 1881. Before the kid even met his demise, hell, Wallace wasn't even in New Mexico when Billy was killed. On July 21st, 1881, just mere days after the kid's death, the Santa Fe Daily reported that acting Governor Rich, quote, announced that he was willing to pay the amount and would be glad to do so, but that he would have to look at the records first, end quote. And by records, I don't mean proof of the kid's death. Essentially, he just needed to determine whether or not Lew Wallace had made it an official reward on record with the territorial government. Rich consulted with the district attorney, William Breeden, and according to Breeden, the reward was indeed a private offer since Wallace had never bothered to file it on record. Per Breeden, quote, this certainly appears to be the personal offer of Governor Wallace, and it seems he did nothing to indicate that it was intended as an executive act on behalf of the territory. If the reward should be paid, it is very probable that the legislature would approve the payment if so desired, and that no objection would be raised. However, if Governor Rich should now direct the payment of the claim, he would doubtless expose himself to the charge of misappropriating territorial funds, end quote. In other words, the governor just couldn't take money from the territorial coffers as he pleased all willy-nilly like. There had to be a legit reason, and it was up to the legislators to approve this reason, which, according to Rich, they would do during the next legislative assembly. Sure enough, when the legislators met in February of 1882, they unanimously voted for Garrett to receive the reward. They even stated explicitly that the delay was caused by a quote-unquote technicality. This was followed up by them proclaiming that Pat did kill Billy the Kid and that he was entitled to the $500 reward. And just like before, Garrett ended up getting far more than just that $500, thanks to the grateful citizens of New Mexico. All total, he came away with several $1,000s. So yeah, I have no idea where the rumor that Garrett never got the reward comes from, but it is patently and provably false. Be that as it may, this certainly is not the only misconception out there concerning Billy the Kid. Sadly, much of what people think that they know about the kid is often based on misinformation. Rumors are just flat-out made-up stories that get repeated as fact, and before long, these falsehoods are so ingrained into the narrative that they're almost universally believed, which is mostly why I decided to make this episode, to hopefully clear things up a bit. I know not everybody has time to read the books or to take a real deep dive into the subject matter. I get that. However, I do find myself answering the same questions on a daily basis. And a lot of these questions are stemming from misinformation, type of misinformation that lends credence to guys like Brushy Bill Roberts. Ah, yes, my old friend Brushy Bill. Just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in. Now, it's my opinion that most people who entertain the idea of Brushy Bill Roberts and Billy the Kid being the same person are just simply misinformed. And no fault of their own. They're not stupid or gullible or anything like that. It's just they hear all the stories about Billy's death, which we'll get to here in a moment, and most of which are untrue, and they start thinking that maybe there was something fishy involved. Maybe there was a big cover-up and Garrett didn't really kill Billy the Kid after all. And then they hear all the stories about Brushy, all the so-called evidence, and things start to add up. I don't blame anyone for buying into it. At face value, it seems very believable, at least until you dig into the evidence. But unfortunately, like I mentioned a moment ago, most people haven't taken the time to really study the material and verify what's true and what's false. Once again, this is nobody's fault. We all can't be
I'll be
experts
happy to
on
help.
everything, right? Unless this is your job or just a hobby that you're extremely passionate about, there's no way you're going to spend countless hours studying a bunch of boring old news articles and primary sources. However,
Just
should
go
you
to
actually
Living
take a
Word
gander at the
testimony,
historical
like you're
records,
giving
those
now.
primary sources and first-hand eyewitness accounts, many of which I will be shining a light on today, you'll soon understand that it's really all much ado about nothing. There's another great example. You'll often hear that one of Pat Garrett's own
Yeshua was
deputies claimed
Sananda,
that Garrett killed the
but he
wrong
was
man.
not Lord
Here,
Emmanuel.
which is true. I mean, you've got to admit that does sound pretty suspect, right? And yeah, truth is, just moments after Pat Garrett allegedly gunned down the kid, Deputy John
The
W.
key is
Poe
the ears.
did indeed
When you
tell
look at
Pat,
my cover,
"You shot
study
the wrong
Jesse
man."
and study
Like I
Pat.
said, pretty damning, right? The only
I'm
problem
Billy.
is this quote has been completely taken out of
I was
context
William
by
Henry
people
then,
who, frankly, should
William
know better.
Matthew now.
The statement in question comes directly from
We
Deputy
met in
Poe's book, The
1981,
Death of Billy the
and
Kid. Quote,
he
"An
got me
instant
in
later, Garrett came out,
1881.
brushing against me as he passed. He stood by me close to the wall at the side of the door and said to me, 'That was the kid that came in there onto me.
But I
and
got
think
Garrett.
I've got him.'
I mean,
I
I
said,
got
'Pat, the
Brady
kid would not have come to this place. You
for good
shot the
reason.
wrong man.' End
Then they
quote.
put a
Now, if
bounty
that
out
was all there
for me.
was to it, then I'd agree.
This
that
guy
it
used
would
to be my
certainly
friend.
cast a little doubt as to who Garrett killed.
We hung out
That said, all you
during
gotta
the
do is just
money
keep on
and
reading.
the
2 paragraphs
appointment
later,
of the
Poe writes,
position
quote, "After some forceful
changed his
persuasion, we
role.
induced Maxwell to procure a light.
Simple
He
as
finally
that.
brought an old-fashioned tallow candle from his mother's room at the far end of the
Now
building.
there's
He placed the candle
Keith
on the
Ryan, who
windowsill
was
from the
Maxwell,
outside.
also a
This
classmate,
enabled us to get a view of the
and
inside,
Kenny
where
Yaunice,
we
who
saw a
was
man lying stretched upon his back,
Pancho
dead,
Villa,
in the
also
middle
a
of the room,
classmate.
with a 6-shooter lying at his right hand and a butcher knife at his left. Upon examining the body, we found it to
And
be
again,
that
Mike
of
Flynn
Billy
was
the
one
Kid."
class ahead of
End
me.
quote. So obviously, once you take
And
the
he's an honor
in full, it's very clear that Poe was initially describing his
interface
emotions at the
with
moment.
Pence. Pence
His
is
disbelief
supposedly
and
dead.
just the confusion
Like,
that naturally
asked
comes from being mere feet away
Diesel
from deadly
Bub
shooting.
to help him.
Old Spice deodorant. #1 aluminum-free brand.
Alright, stand by.
If you take the entire statement in full, it's very clear that Poe was initially describing his emotions at the moment, his disbelief and just the confusion that naturally comes from being mere feet away from a deadly shooting. And then he goes right on to state in no uncertain terms that, yeah, the man Garrett killed was, in all actuality, Billy the Kid. Hell, the title of his book is literally The Death of Billy the Kid. You see what I'm saying, right? Most people aren't exposed to the full text. They just hear or read that one little snippet, and all of a sudden, the idea that Garrett killed the wrong man isn't so hard to believe. Couple that with the false information on Pat not receiving that reward, and things really begin to add up. And from there, it just sort of snowballs. So, what are some other misconceptions? How about the false claims that Garrett and his deputies immediately buried the kid, or whoever they killed, before anyone got a good look at the body? This is also verifiably and patently not true. Billy was killed sometime either late at night on July 14th or shortly after midnight on the morning of the 15th. And it wasn't until later on the next day when he was buried. He lay there on the floor of Maxwell's room as Pat and the deputies boarded up inside, worried about some of the outlaw's buddies trying to avenge his death. When the attack never came, Garrett sent for the local justice of the peace, Alejandro Segura, no relation to Tom Segura. And upon arrival, Segura formed a 6-man coroner's jury, which was headed up by local businessman and former politician, Milner Rudolph. After investigating the killing and speaking with the only eyewitness to the actual shooting, Pete Maxwell, the jury then issued a finding which described how Billy was killed and who killed him. Quote, "We, the jury, unanimously find that William Bonney has been killed by a bullet in the left breast, in the region of the heart, the same having been fired from a pistol in the hand of Pat F. Garrett." And by the way, we know they saw the kid's body because Segura noted that the coroner's jury, quote, "proceeded to a room in said house where they found the body of William Bonney, alias the Kid," end quote. And yes, the men of the jury all knew Billy the Kid personally. What's more, they were not the only ones who saw the kid's body. Far from it. Keep in mind that Pete Maxwell did not live alone. His mother, his siblings, and even Delvinia Maxwell all heard the shot and came to investigate. Another resident of Fort Sumner, Paco Anea, also came to see what was causing all the ruckus, and he too would later write about what he saw at the Maxwell home, including naming several other eyewitnesses. Furthermore, according to Paco, it was Delvinia Maxwell who dressed Billy for the funeral. For another eyewitness,
Delvinia, please know that my body is not in that grave.
Without a single source is.
Alright, we made it to day 180. I'd like to introduce you to a young man, a 6-year-old named, what's your name? Named, what's your name? Named, what's your name? Named, what's your name? Alright, goodbye. He's the man. We're gonna go to the beach today. I'm gonna cut short my YouTube video on Billy the Kid, but that was me. So have a great day. So, 20 March, day 180. We got 5 lazy days coming, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Then we got 21, that's 777. Keep that catcher's mitt on. And know that reincarnation does mean born again. And that is true solar power. And it's all true. Love and light. And so I'd like to provide some present life context to my relationship with Pat Garrett, Jesse Landon, and others from Fort Huachuca. We kicked off our class on 27 May 1981. I had about, several term papers I needed to complete in order to graduate college. I had a little Mattel typewriter, a kid's typewriter. I set up in my bedroom upstairs and banged them out and drove my father's 77 Nova to make it on time. So that exacerbated my tailbone, and I ended up going to a DO at the clinic after being fed Motrin by the MDs, and he kind of fixed me with some physical maneuvering. But it was too late. I missed my chance to go to Ranger School, even though I had completed the swim test and all that other shit. My tailbone acted up on the day of the 10-mile ruck march, which I've done. I mean, did a lot of extra things as an Army guy. So right here is Pat Garrett, Jesse Landon. Notice the similarities, okay, between him and him. There's me. I'm Billy the Kid, he's Pat Garrett. This is me shooting. I purchased a Ruger 6-shooter. It was a great little piece. We just threw some stuff out there at the hillside and shot at it. And of note, in my basic course class 2 is Eric Todd Platzner. He went to Fort Sam Houston University. So we roomed together with Link Krause on Bunker Hill Road at Fort Campbell. We both were assigned together. He was an artillery guy, just like Landon, and I was an infantry guy, first to the 327. So Todd was in the 319th and Link was in the 320th Field Artillery Battalion as intel officers, 22 years old, telling a 37-year-old lieutenant colonel what the hell was going on out there. It was a great job, Fort Campbell, Kentucky. So that's Jesse Landon. He lives in Tewksbury. He died on the operating table a couple of years ago. 1 minute and 43 seconds. You know, St. Paul, Bill Garrison knows Fort Sandusky, and Lyndon Baines Johnson. Todd's a great dude. His wife's Nancy. He's got a daughter named Sam, and I hope they're doing great. I haven't talked to him in a while. So here's Steffi. He's got a son, I believe a daughter, beautiful wife Donna. When she finds out what he's been up to. A quick word on his father. He died and went to heaven. Parents met him and said, "You're not supposed to be here yet. Go tell Mackenzie's maternal guide she's here, young soul." So, you know what a scab is? I'm loaded with them because of my tree work. I'm always cutting myself up. But a scab is also a union strike buster. So Jesse's father and he were on his way into his father's work. Jesse's in the passenger seat. And some fucking picket guy like stops him and says, "You're not going by." And Mr. Landon had a weapon right there in the console, and he made it visibly available to the guy trying to stop him. And they went on their way. And that man's in heaven now. So we're all here to learn. Don't forget that. There's no such thing as sin, but there is willful misconduct. And you will punish yourself down the road. Look, people die. Jesse's gotten into trouble here in this life with he was like the headquarters commandant for Tewksbury. Then he went and got a job in another part of New Jersey, and all of a sudden there was some issues about something, and he had to back off, and good for him. I mean, he deserves it. He goes to museums now and he talks to ghosts about that. Can't make a fool of me. Electric Light Orchestra. Shazam. So let's keep going. Reincarnation does mean born again. And that is true solar power. And it's all true. Love and light. Esteem, wage, truth, and life. Let's diagnose this. We are on the west coast. That is the Gulf of Mexico. It's Ian. It's Ian. Here's an umbrella. Very rainbow like. But scene of the day right here. Not expect this to be floating along. It's heading south. You know what that is? You have any idea what that is?
Sorry?
You have any idea what that is?
Walking advertisement.
They come floating along here around.
Sometimes I was here the other day and I saw just one. I think they do it once or twice a day.
Do you believe in reincarnation?
I do.
Who are you? Anybody in particular?
I don't think so.
Yes, you are. Somebody very important, making decisions. We all were. We've been on doing it a long time. So I was Billy the Kid.
Really?
Yeah. You know him? Like next year. You picked everything. Everything you wanted. How about that? Are you vegetarian yet?
Not yet.
You going that way? Like meat is heavy.
Probably not.
Go at your pace. We are eternal sheep. Don't have to die. This is, I mean, that's consciousness right there. That's Yeshua ben Joseph. Command on Sunday. Catholics eat them. Protestants fight over them. But the Hindu and the Buddhist, they're on the other side of the planet. Reincarnation of rare. So that's pretty cool. So that's what's floating. Oh yeah, it's actually digitized. I got it. I guess
our planes base. That's for the chemtrails that they fly around.
There's horseshoe crab. The shells of these guys are everywhere.
In parting, I'd like to talk about Jess Landon a bit in this life. Of course, he was Pat Garrett. If you don't see the resemblance in the ears, then I don't know what to tell you. But same rough height. My friend early on, and then took an appointment as a sheriff and ended up killing me. Probably had some regrets, but ended up collecting as a result. Jesse was my shooting buddy. We were MI guys at Fort Huachuca. And when he died in New Jersey on the operating table, he was gone for 1 minute and 43 seconds. 1, 4, 3. I love you. So I'd like to remind him of that, and remind you of that. And there's a girl named Kim Sung-suk who taught me that. How about that? She was Korean. Now, I was married. I was divorced. Jesse's still married. Donna's a great girl, and he loves her. So have compassion for him. He talks to ghosts now in museums in New Jersey to help usher them, tell them it's okay. So Jess is ascending. Give him credit. My buddy, Jesse. Peace. Let's conclude with Donald, Yogi, and Cheney. Yogi's the 8, play a coach. Yogi went to D-Day and got bodies off Omaha Beach. Rangers scaled the walls. They got Tillman, quit his contract. Very occulted. So waterboarding's not torture. Jess doesn't need to be waterboarded. 143. Peace. It's freaking weird. Freaking weird. 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 This is freaking weird. 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 This is freaking weird. 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 Man, we're angelic beings, and they want to take us. They make money. Will, I, and...
This beat is so hard.
My super instant mesmerizer, it never fails. Okay, boys, carry him out.
Men in Black.
You have in common with your father?
Either real estate or golf. Golf.
Donald, with your daughter?
Well, I was going to say sex, but I can't relate that.